Hello, nurturing parents, and welcome back to the Nurturing Parent Podcast. We are so excited to bring in this April and this springtime season with a little mini springtime series. And to start that series off, this week we are talking about spring fever, how to diagnose it, notice your symptoms, and when to seek medical attention. Just kidding. Amma would almost probably like, what? No. So if you don't know what spring fever is, this is going to be an excellent episode for you to tune into. But if you are also just sensing a shift in energy, maybe your energy, maybe your children, you might have a spike in energy and have a sudden urge to do some spring cleaning like me, or you're just super tired, because you can also get really tired after that spike in energy. It's interesting. So to learn more, stay tuned and let's get into it.
Hey, Mama. Welcome to the Nurturing Parent Podcast. Do you want to end the constant battles for bath time? Do you find yourself emotionally exhausted at the end of the day? Do you wake up with big hopes for a smooth day of fun with your little ones, only to face an early morning meltdown because you peeled their banana the wrong way?
Silly you.
Silly you.
Hey, I'm Serena. I am a mama of two little ones, and as a new mama, I constantly question myself. I wanted to make sure I was raising respectful kids while also building a strong bond with them. But I discovered that I had to unlearn my ideas that punishment was the way. With Lisa's encouragement, I've been practicing a respectful and gentle parenting approach, which is strengthening our bond as a family.
And hi, I'm Lisa. Amma means grandmother in Icelandic. I am a mama and an amma. And I have over 40 years of experience in childcare and parent coaching. And I am so excited to share the knowledge I've gained over these years with you.
Together in this podcast, each week we will explore some easy to implement skills you can add to your parenting tool belt to help you create a happy, thriving family.
Hello. Welcome to April here at the Nurturing Parent. All right, I have a question for you listeners. I'm wondering if in recent weeks you've noticed an increased restlessness, friskiness, exuberance, some kind of energy. It might be even kind of leaning towards the frenetic energy, more easily distracted feelings. And these would be in your children, but they might also be in yourselves. And it sometimes that comes out in the form of us parents in the spring cleaning kind of activity.
I was going to say, yeah, that's me.
Okay.
Neurotic about spring cleaning. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Have you noticed any of that change of energy with your children? And listener, I'm asking you, but we're going to have Mama Serena have a look and see what she thinks about that in her world.
So Aniston's always kind of been in outdoors, even like a baby, but her getting restless and wanting to be outside all the time, it's showing up more.
Mm-hmm.
Even like on Friday, because we're recording right now on a Monday. So Friday, she was with my mother-in-law and she took my mother-in-law out for a walk. She did not want to be inside. And so she goes, she puts her shoes on and she says, afuera, afuera. And she just wants to go outside. So she dragged
And
my
what does afuera mean?
Outside.
Outside. Okay. Thanks.
And she dragged her outside and my daughter walked her grandma down to the park. My almost 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And she just wanted to play. And so my mother-in-law followed her lead and just let her kind of lead the way.
Yeah. And was it a quick trip to the park?
No, it was like all afternoon, probably a few hours.
Yeah. She didn't want to let her come home either, right?
No.
So
my daughter
good.
didn't want to let my mother-in-law come home.
Yes,
Yeah.
to be clear. I love that story so much. And what I love about it is that the adult was willing to take the child's lead. And a lot of children have an innate, intrinsic need to be outside. So I'm going to look and all year long. And for those of you in the southern hemisphere, I know you're going into autumn now. I'm sorry. But for those of us in the northern hemisphere, that need is going to be even deeper right now. So this is what we call spring fever. It's not a fever that has a temperature. It's not an ill health sort of thing, but it's not a medical condition, but it is something that we commonly know as spring fever. And of course, Emma looked into the brain science behind the spring fever and what is actually going on. So, in this episode, we're going to look at spring fever a little bit. We've established that probably in your brain, you've established that's also been happening in your world, in your, desperate need to spring clean, or in your children's changed energy. Now, I will point out that for some children and adults, but a far fewer percentage, a far lower percentage, there's actually a deep fatigue that can happen. But for most of us, it's this friskiness and exuberance and just more energetic. It might be really frenetic. So anyway, we're going to look at what is spring fever, and then we're going to look at why outside time is so important. Just touch on that and give you a couple of other episodes where we dive much deeper into that to point you to. And this might be a happy part for you. We're going to look at how do you get the kids to come outside if you're, coming up against some resistance for that. Because as much as children usually have that intrinsic need to be outside, because we are mammals, as I like to remind you, children who are raised primarily indoors, and especially children who do get screen time daily, the studies are showing that the desire to go outside is decreasing. But we're going to change that.
So springtime, I don't even know when exactly spring starts. Do you know anything?
Well, scientifically, the spring equinox and the autumn equinox, they are when there is equal daylight morning and night. And the spring at somewhere on the longitudinal, latitudinal lines. Spring equinox happens the third week of March, around March 21st. But you will notice that late winter, sort of mid-February through into late March, there's a real rise in the energy outside in the natural world. The buds are starting to come up. The blossoms are starting to bud on the trees, and then they open up. So all, depending on where you live, of course, the climate where you live, but those kinds of things can start as early as late January, where I live, where it's fairly mild. But yeah, so that rise of energy in the natural world really starts in what we call late winter. In some of the older kind of earth noticing cultures, nature noticing cultures, like ancient cultures, they actually had 8 seasons. So there was winter, late winter, spring, late spring, or early summer, like that, right? So there was 4 extras in between them all. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. So by the time this episode comes out, if you're in the northern hemisphere or over
Yeah,
by kind of by us, then it's springtime by the time this episode drops.
that's right. In early April. This will be for first couple of days of April. So it
Okay.
will be spring, which is
Yeah.
why we're doing a little mini series again for you.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so spring is my favorite season. Not because my birthday is in the season, maybe, but maybe not. I also just love like the rebirth of everything, the
Hmm.
plants, the animals, and I love just noticing the buds and pointing out them out to my daughter so they can start recognizing and looking for those things. And it's also just a great start to getting our kids used to being outdoors more and setting that foundation for the summer. I think this is a great time to start
Hmm.
that and lay that
Yes.
foundation to have a nice outdoor summer as well.
It is a great transition season for sure, from all indoors to, wanting to be outside most of the summer. It's also really good for our skin, to get that lighter sun in the spring that's not so heavy and intense in the summer and burn so quickly. We can start a bit of pigment in our skin if we ease into being outside in the sun, which helps us to not burn, right? So,
Yeah, that's one of my motivations to getting outside is getting that little glow on my face and my arms.
yeah, yeah, beautiful. All right, so let's look. What is spring fever actually in the brain science of it all? What is going on? So, with the increased daylight, what happens is it we reset our circadian rhythm. So if you've listened to any of our episodes where we talk about having a bedtime routine or getting outside, lots of different times I do mention the circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm is where we fall asleep when it's bedtime and we wake up when it's time to get up, and then we're awake and active during the daytime, and then we're asleep and sleepy during the night. Now, those of you who have very young babies, I know they're not sleeping all night, and that's perfectly normal and actually best for them because that's how they're developed. That's how they're designed, and they will develop their circadian rhythm in those first few months and years of life with our help getting them outside in the daylight, having it dark when they go to sleep at night, that kind of thing. What also happens with the increased daylight, because of that reset for our circadian rhythm, is that you will notice the children will sleep better. And that's because in the daytime, they have more energy. When we have that increased daylight, we actually have more energy in our bodies and in our brains. There's something that the science calls acute alerting effects. What that means is with that daylight, our brains are more alert. We are overall more alert. We have a higher cognitive functioning, so our brains are working at a higher level, which leads to increased processing abilities. So when they're having their meltdowns, and they just seem to be stuck in trying to process what's going on in their world. With getting them outside, there will be this increased processing ability because that daylight is feeding that part of their brain that has it be more alert so they can process better. There's a great reason to want to get outside.
Oh yeah. I feel like because my kids do watch TV and I just think about like what their bodies are used to and wanting that movement. And when they're watching TV, they're just like stuck. And I think
Yes.
about everything in not just that it's staying still, but that it's stuck in a place. And then it's like an overload when they need that movement or stimulation that they're
Mhm.
not getting when they're just like a potato.
Yeah. It's called sedentary, being sedentary, sitting. We are a very sedentary culture, and it is causing, in my humble opinion, a lot of parenting difficulties that wouldn't actually even exist if we were focused on A, getting outside, and B, if you live in a climate where you can't be outside all year long, whether it's freezing cold, like freezing cold in the winter. If it's just cold, you can get outside. But if it's really freezing in the winter and super, super hot in the summer, then you've got to find other ways to get that movement happening. But daylight, daylight, daylight. That's what we're focusing on today. And of course, the other thing that increased daylight does is it offers a rise in the mood. So there's a couple of cool things about this brain science. In the darker months, our brains are starved for serotonin. And the serotonin we get flooded with serotonin when we get the increased daylight. The hippocampus area of the brain is specifically in charge of mood and memory, actually, but mood I wanted to focus on here because with the shorter days, and what I mean by that is there's less natural light. This part blew my mind. The hippocampus area of the brain is actually smaller.
Wow.
When we get that rush of light and the serotonin gets activated, the hippocampus actually grows bigger during the lighter months of the year. And again, that's affecting mood. That's the mood center of our brain.
I saw that a lot in my mother-in-law because she is always wanting to move around, do stuff. She's a very happy person. And in the winter, she is just a completely different person. She doesn't do as much. She's all about like dancing and singing, and she loves cooking. And in the winter, it's like she loses that
Mm.
part of her.
She might be interested in trying a happy light. You know, these lights that are for people who experience what's called SAD, seasonal affective disorder. And I want you parents, I want you to think about that for yourselves. If you notice your mood really dropping in those darker months, those happy lights are easy to use. I have used them. You get your eyeballs on them, get them in your eyeballs first thing in the morning for 20 minutes. And so if you've got to just get up and get in the kitchen and start getting ready for the day, have it somewhere on the kitchen counter that you can face it so that your eyes are actually getting that light. Anyway, that's an aside, but that's why the happy lights actually help to shift people's moods because they would help that hippocampus area of the brain not go quite so low.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just love the brain science, as you know.
Wow.
Okay, so that's all about spring fever. Why outside time is so important. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview and then Serena's going to give us some um episodes that relate to this episode directly. And what I want to say is outside time is vital to child development. It's vital to growing healthy children, physically, emotionally, even socially, because we're different when we're outside. We're not cooped up together. Cognitively, so that's your intellect. That grows and it develops more and differently when we're outside, that we can't get that development indoors. And the immune system development outside is huge. Do you know that we get vitamin D through our eyelids
I didn't
and
know
through
through
our
the
skin?
eyelids. Yeah.
Through our skin, but through our eyelids is its main entry point.
Wow.
And sunlight that's where we get our main vitamin D. So again, it Outside time really encourages an appropriate circadian rhythm so that they're getting sleepy at bedtime. Um, the emotional part is it lowers stress and anxiety. And I want to say that your children are never too young to get them outside every day. Even if it's freezing cold, even if it's boiling hot, the recommended time from pediatric associations is 20 minutes a day minimum. 20 minutes a day minimum. Your babies can be sleeping outside. You take them for a walk in their stroller when it's nap time, they fall asleep. It's brilliant.
It is brilliant, and 20 minutes really doesn't sound like a lot, but I think the average kids spend like 6 to 7 minutes outside really when they're walking from the house to the car and then from the car to wherever they're going. And what's 20 minutes? A walk around the block maybe.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
My 5-year-old son Oliver, who was diagnosed with ADHD, completely lost it in Costco. He threw himself onto the floor in an epic meltdown, shattering 2 pasta sauce jars. I was mortified, but that day wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning. I'm Dana Kay, board-certified health and nutrition practitioner, best-selling author, and host of the Soaring Child podcast. After that day, I dove deep into natural ADHD strategies, and what I found was remarkable, and the improvement in Oliver's symptoms were phenomenal. Join me on the Soaring Child podcast and discover natural strategies that bring real change for our children.
Yeah. And that 7 minutes came from our episode with Ginny, right? Who has the 1,000 hours outside program.
Yeah, 1,000 hours outdoor movement. Those are episodes 103 and 104, which are great episodes to listen to after this if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
Some other episodes that are great was episode 18, Yay, Springtime Fun. Episode number 30, Growing Gardens, Growing Children. And then episode number 85 with Heather Teach Outside, which will all be in the show notes. And you can just click on the links there and go listen if you haven't.
Yeah. Or go listen again. Because what I find is every year, and in a lot of episodes, we talk about similar things that we've talked about before. And it kind of depends where you are in your development and in your process as a parent. You'll hear things differently.
Yeah.
And of course, we all know that you don't hear all the things the first time you listen to anything, right? You might, I do that all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, that,
Yeah, or we'll have these conversations and a lot of it doesn't hit me until I listen to it again when I'm editing and actually writing the things down. And even when I'm editing, I'll go back a few times and re-listen to something you said and then it hits different.
Right. Yeah, cool. So please go have a listen again. And just for a quick minute, I just want to say when you listen to episodes that really move you or make you go, oh yeah, that, I really encourage you to share them with other parent friends because we just don't know what a difference we can make in someone's life by taking the 3 seconds it's going to take to click share episode and text it to a friend, right? So I would love to know that you're out there doing that because it just might change somebody's life. All right. Now, how do we deal with spring fever? We embrace it. All that extra energy, all that. I want to go out and play, all that bouncing off the walls, all that sort of attitude. You might notice it like an attitude thing that you're like, oh, why is my child so full of attitude? It's this energy that builds up in our bodies. And when they're really little, they won't know what it is. I mean, we adults often don't know what it is. And then we're like, we just had a really sunny weekend where I live. And it was like, oh, this feeling of just let me out there, you know.
Yeah.
So, like I like to say, if the kids are bouncing off the walls, take down the walls and get out the door. But, yeah.
Yeah, actually this weekend was very sunny over here too in Long Island, New York. And so we took advantage. My husband and I cleaned out the garage on Saturday, just reorganized everything, got rid of the stuff that the kids really aren't using anymore. And I texted you, of course, a proud mama moment. And oh, we spent how many hours outside? I think like
6 yesterday, Sunday.
well, 6 yesterday, which ended up being 8 on Sunday because I texted you because I was proud, but we really just stayed outside all day. And
Yeah.
then Saturday, I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 hours, maybe 6 hours. It was a lot of hours that we woke
Yeah.
up in the morning, we had breakfast outside. They
Hmm.
wanted to sit on the steps in the front. They sat on the steps. And then I think I went to the gym. When I came back from the gym, I wanted to practice my jump ropes. So they kind of just brought their toys outside and played on the front lawn while I practiced jump roping because I saw this cool dance jump rope thing that I want to practice and learn how to do. And we kind of just stayed outside all day. My daughter, she knocked on the neighbor's door because they had put a happy birthday sign in front. So my daughter is like, oh, his name is Dominic. She's like, I want to play with Dominic, Dominic, Dominic. So I crossed the street with her and she walked over and she knocked on the door and asked if Dominic could come play with her. And she invited him over and they kind of just ran around the yard for a while. And then same thing yesterday. We power washed and we're cleaning up outside and we had breakfast, lunch outside, snacks outside. We did a barbecue, then we did s'mores outside. It was just
Mm.
all day outside and it felt great.
Okay, this is spring fever in
Yeah.
action.
So why I wanted to say this was because they were yelling yesterday outside. And I was like, I love the sound of their yells. And it's
Yeah.
a lot different when it's outside than when they're yelling inside.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing all of that. That is normal, natural, necessary, vital behavior for our children to be able to express. They need children, especially very young children, and we kind of squash it out of them by the time they're sort of middle childhood, but their natural uh, inclination is to be outside, to have, well, to have big energy, to have big sounds coming out of their body. Like listen to especially little girls and some little boys too, that high pitched scream
Oh
that
yeah.
they do, right? When they're excited or when they're kind of, playing like cat chase, whatever. And the yelling and the jumping and the climbing. That's how children are supposed to be. And we keeping them indoors all year long, expecting them to sit down, expecting them to be quiet, expecting them to use quote unquote inside voices. It's not fair.
Yeah.
And guess who's struggling? We are, the parents. We're struggling because we're fighting them all the time to have appropriate indoor behavior. They need to get out. They need the freedom to just let that energy out of their bodies. I tell you, we would have far fewer parenting issues if we got outside every day for an hour to 2 to 3 hours. Now, I know that's not always possible for a lot of you because many two-parent families are working. And of course, one-parent families, it's harder. 20 minutes, go run around the block. Or like we've talked recently about when you pick up from daycare, go to the park, bring that snack, go to the park, do that run, do that play, do that chase around. Get that energy out before you get home and make dinner and get into bed, right? I promise you, it will make a very positive impact difference in your lives. So let's move on to how do we get them out the door? Unless you've got one like Mama Serena's youngest, who's like outside, outside, outside. What's that word again in Spanish?
Afuera.
Afuera, afuera. Yeah. So unless you have one of those, and I strongly encourage you not to put a cap on those. Hopefully we are going to give you some ideas about how to get them outside, how to be willing to go with you. So the first thing I want to say is, instead of asking if they want to go, you parent, you need to use your adult brain that knows how good it's going to be, or at least trust us when we tell you how good it's going to be. And you need to plan it. You need to pack snacks and refillable water bottles. And I say refillable because we are coming up into this is Earth Day month, and every day of the year should be Earth Day. Let's be really conscious about the waste that we're creating. So you want to bring water bottles, you want to bring snacks, and you want to figure out what clothing is needed for the weather, right? If it's raining, you want to make sure they've got boots and something to keep their bodies dry and their heads dry, whether it's an umbrella or a hood, that's up to you, or a rain hat, whichever. But here I want to say it's important not to insist that your child bring the appropriate clothing because they're old enough to get their own clothes. What I'm encouraging you in this episode is we want to build on positive experiences of getting them outside and having them want to go outside. So the beginning part of that is you, the parent, you bring the appropriate clothing that's needed. And if they choose not to bring a sweater or a coat because they said they're warm and they're fine, you bring that extra sweater or coat.
Yeah, and one thing that I've learned recently is just being able to trust my daughter, because I've noticed that has been a fight, especially with Spanish culture. They're always saying, put your jacket on or you're going to get sick, or put your hat on, you're going to get sick. And, kids' bodies are warmer than ours are as adults. And I'm not going to fight my daughter to put her sweater on if she doesn't feel cold. I just learned to trust that if she's cold, she's going to come to me and say, I'm cold, and want to put her sweater on. So
yes,
yesterday I was cold and I had a sweater on and she didn't want to put it on. So, and she was running around the whole day. So she probably wasn't cold and I wasn't going to fight her. And she also, when they're running around the yard, they just don't want to wear their shoes. And at first that was a fight. And, I'm one that I don't really buy her many nice clothes unless we have an event. And at the end of the day, her pants were ripped, her knees were all ripped. And so that's also part of picking out clothes. The process of picking out clothes is don't pick out nice clothes that you're going to be yelling at them to not get dirty and not to ruin.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I've just learned to trust my daughter more and let her run around in her socks, or if she wants to take her shoes off. Sometimes we go to the park and they just want to put their feet in the sand. Now so
Yes.
conditioned to, no, you don't take your shoes off outside. And so just learning to let that go was a big relief and helped a lot.
Unless you're in an area where there is dangerous stuff, like some parks, I'm sorry, but especially interurban and even where I live in this rural community, our park, unfortunately, has been taken over by some, people that are struggling. And so if you're in an area where there might be used needles or dog doo-doo or that kind of thing, you have to assess that it's safe. But absolutely, where there is safety for their bare feet, please let them take their shoes off. That's again, it's natural. We're meant to be touching the earth with our bare feet. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Um, and I love that you've come to trust your daughter and her knowing whether she's warm or cold and needs a sweater or not. And so many of us make a judgment call about whether you need your sweater on when we are the adult, right? Or your coat or a hood or whatever. And yes, if a child is going out in the pouring rain and you're going to be out for a few, if you're going out in the pouring rain in the backyard and you're going to be out there 5 or 10 minutes, every now and then it's pretty cool to just let the rain pour down on your bare head and just feel totally soaking wet. If there's like a downpour, that can be a pretty cool experience. If you can get inside, get those wet things off, dry your hair, and be cozy and warm again without getting a chill. So, yes, we adults do know that sometimes getting a chill can stress the immune system a bit, but we don't actually get colds from getting cold. That's a
Right.
bit of a fallacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I love that. Bring the sweater or the coat or the hood or the hat or the umbrella or whatever. Bring those things. But you, parent, you need to pack that outdoor kit. Okay. Then you're not going to ask them if they want to go. One thing you can do is offer a choice when they're getting ready. So, do you want help with your boots or do you want to get them on independently? That's one kind of choice you can offer. Another kind of choice is I'm packing a snack for our walk. I'm wondering if you feel like you're in an apple mood or an orange mood for when we have our snack outside, or this kind of cracker or that kind of cracker, or, give them an either or choice of something you're willing to pack in the snack. Okay. So sometimes helping them get involved in the process of going out, um, inviting their input into what they want to bring on a particular walk. If there's resistance, you might want to change it up a bit. Do you want to bring a dump truck today or a basket to gather things in? Personally, I love bringing dump trucks to the beach in particular because there's stones to move and there's sand to, put in the dump truck with a shovel and all that kind of thing. But maybe they want to bring a basket for gathering things at the beach too, right? So, inviting their input of if there's an option to bring a different toy each day or each walk or something. Eliciting interest. Now, this one you might want to start with if you know there's some potential resistance there. When you elicit the interest of the child, think about what is your child interested in. Most toddlers, even young children a bit older, are interested in the bugs and the bees and the buzzy things and things. And so you might want to say, oh, I wonder which we will see first today outside on our walk, a wiggly worm or a crawly bug. And they might say, maybe we'll see a butterfly first. Maybe we will.
Another exciting one, especially in the springtime, is all the babies. In the
Mm,
springtime, we see a lot of
goslings. Yes.
goslings.
Yeah. Yeah. So where you are, there's a pond or a water area that has geese. And
Yeah.
other people might live where there's ducks in a pond or a lake or something. Yes. If you're lucky enough to live where there are farms, you might see lambs or goats with babies. Lambs or goats with babies are called kids, baby goats. Yeah, so the babies would be exciting. And you might elicit interest by saying, today we're going to drive to where we can see the lambs. And that could really elicit some interest in getting outside. Um, So, yes. And then when it's time to go, you've elicited their interest. You've offered a choice of what they might want to bring, their input of what they might want to bring on the walk. Now, you don't want to do all of these things every time, but employ one or two of these tactics as needed, kind of thing. And within a few times of going outside, when going outside becomes part of your daily routine or part of your routine 2 or 3, hopefully times a week. And on the weekends, like Mama Serena, when you're able to just be outside all day long. But when you've got all those things, then offering them a choice if they want to get their boots on by themselves or if they want your help to let them know. And you are going to bring all the things. You've already packed it. Okay. And one of the other things that could really elicit interest is finding an outdoor play group in your area. And if there isn't one, you can start one.
Yes. So I love that idea. And I think Jenny mentioned that in our episode with her is
Mhm.
that that's a great way to motivate your kids to get outside is inviting one of their friends and
I think that's
so
what got her into creating her whole movement was
yes,
going
yeah.
out with a family of friends. Yes.
Yeah. And so for my daughter's daycare, the parents have a group chat and it's cute because on the weekends they'll put that they're going with their kid to this park at this time and they'll invite other families to join, which I think is a great idea.
Nice. Okay, great. And if you don't have one already, I really strongly encourage you to create an outdoor play space in your backyard if you're lucky enough to have a backyard, in a common area if there is one. Some cities have garden plots that you can rent for a season. You could just make that garden plot into a little bit of a garden and a bit of a play space if you don't have one
Mhm.
yourself. If you live in an apartment building, for instance, and just create something on your patio, on your balcony, even a place that's inspiring for them to go outside, get that daylight into them. And you can bring a whole lot of different things on walks. I know you, Serena, bring a few different things different days, and I certainly do when I have kids in my care. A basket for gathering treasures, sometimes binoculars or magnifying glasses can be exciting. Like I said, dump trucks or other driving vehicles. And then, of course, things that they can drive, their tricycle or their balance bike or a scooter or a push. There's kids' lawnmowers. I had a little boy in my care for years, and anything with wheels was up his alley. So he would bring his lawnmower or his wagon to push, or a wheelbarrow to put, a kid-sized wheelbarrow to push, those kinds of things. Yes. And next week, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of fun things that you can do outside to make outside time interesting and exciting and intriguing and promising for the kids to want to get out there so that you don't have that struggle getting out the door. All right. So I hope some of those ideas of how to get them out the door help. But I promise you, once you get this as a regular occurrence in your family life, it will become easier and easier. And then they will be like little toddler Aniston, so saying, outside, outside, outside. And they will be dragging you by your pinky finger, dragging you down the block. So we hope you have fun outside this week and stay tuned for next week when we have lots more fun ideas for you.
I can't wait for next week's episode.
Yay. All right. We love you.
All right, nurturing parents. To give you my gems, as I always do, I think the main gem is that it's springtime and it is the perfect time to just start getting outside because you probably feel like you and your kids need it. And trust me, I know it can be hard. I know it can be really hard getting out the door with the kids, and sometimes It'll take you an hour to get everybody ready just to get outside for maybe 20 minutes and have some peace. And then have everybody run inside because we're starving and you can't bring everything outside and you forgot to pack some things. But that's okay because practice makes perfect. And by making those mistakes, that's how we'll learn from them. So that's my number one gem from this episode, is that it's springtime for most of us, I think the majority of our listeners. And it's the perfect time to just start getting outside. It's going to be so beneficial for us and our kids. And you'll probably even notice that we're all sleeping better because of this. My gem number 2 is that if you want that glowy skin, get outside. I am dying for some glowy skin because I get very pale in the winter. And so that is the perfect motivation. I need to just take my kids outside. That leads me to number 3, which is an easy way to just start getting outside more, is by doing a chore outside, or doing not a chore, but doing something and making that your routine, something that gets done outside. So for us, it's super easy on the weekend to just have breakfast and lunch outside. And by starting with that, we're usually spending the whole day outside. Aside from Annie taking her nap, we're really outside all day. So that's just some tips and some ways that you can tap into your spring fever. Enjoy this beautiful time of blossoming and blooming. Happy April, happy springtime, and we love you.
I want to sing with you. I want to dance with you. I want to laugh with you. Oh, how I love to be with you. I do. I do. Such a short time we've been together. Seems like a lifetime or two. Never knew I could love another